Um, Again, this is Kuda from Taniwa Agro. We are on our farm. We're still running cabbages. We are just about to plant the second phase of the 10,000 lots. Um, One of our clients advised us that you should never plant anything less than 10,000. So we're just trying to copy a model and see if we can plant maybe 10 blocks of 10,000 cabbages at a time. So we planted this block about 10 days ago. Now I've lost track with which particular date was it. Yeah, but we're about 10-12 days into it. Looking very good. So now we're just about to plant our second lot. Our second lot is again another lot of 10,000. The first lot was Star 3311 from Charter Seeds, who do Sakai's distribution in Zimbabwe. And now the second lot, again from the same supplier, it's still from Charter Seeds. We're going to be planting Kilimo. Charter Seeds Star 3311 is an 85-day variety, but being winter, you expect it out in about 90 days. And then Kilimo is a 75-day variety. Winter, maybe you expect it in about 80. We are trying to see if we can maybe push the winter varieties to get to the summer days in terms of maturity. And we're doing that first of all by adding manure. So the 3311 was planted without any cattle manure on it, but we're going to add cattle manure compost. If you've seen our videos before, we've detailed how we've come about creating the cattle manure compost, and now we're about to apply it to our Kilimo crop. There is someone that I saw online with a 7 kg head on his Kilimo cabbage. So we want to try and see if we can get beyond the 5 kg mark with Kilimo. I know 3311 will get you to 7-8 kgs in terms of head size. I haven't seen that with Kilimo as yet. Someone is claiming that, so we just want to try and see. But we're running this video to just go back to day one to see how we started our process of land prep, so that we help the farmer start right from the beginning, right up to the first week of planting. And then we'll do subsequent videos that detail every other operation that will have taken us. I think we'll title this series a journey to 7 kgs, journey to a 7 kg head, and part 1 is land prep right up to the first week of planting. That is what we're doing with this video, but we want to also share a few things that are important for the farmer to look at as they start their journey. So the first thing is obviously land prep. Our land is clean, it's been cleaned out. What we used was a plow first, so we plowed it in first, and then we used the discs, a one-way disc harrow. What we're using on the farm is a Wessex from Bain. It's a beautiful tool. We call it half a plow. We'll show it very soon. What it has is a larger angle on its disc. It's a fixed angle, but a slightly larger angle, so you get a depth that is slightly lower or slightly deeper than you would get with your conventional disc harrow, which is what makes it quite special. It's got about 24 inches of disc in terms of the size of the discs, and we've used the scalloped disc to get a better finish. The scallop disc is the one in it chops off grass much better than your conventional solid round disc. That's what we've used for land prep, for our initial land prep. So the second thing that I want to point out is the second stage of land preparation, which is pre-watering. We devised this tool, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. Again, I'll share the links in the comment section. We designed this. It's a T-probe for checking on moisture. So the second stage is pre-watering. What is key is a loose term that I use for field capacity, is to make sure that as you start your journey, you make sure before you plant there is enough moisture in the field. So there are two critical things that you need to check. Number one, is to make sure that retained moisture in the field meets whatever moisture you're adding onto the farm. That is our loose way of defining field capacity. So I'll put it in vernacular. Ukachera gomba munda mako, mvura yanga yagara iri pasi, pagara pane unyoro unenge uri pasi. Unyoro ihwohwo hunofana kusangana nehunyoro hwauri kudiridza mumunda imomo, so that there is no gap in the moisture that is on the ground. Let me just do a quick probe here to help explain what I mean. So we've just watered this piece of land. And so as you can see up, pinkish reddish or orangish, I don't know if it's clear. You find that is the moisture that was in the soil from that mark. And then this is the moisture that we've added. As you can see, there is no gap of dry soil between these two, your retained moisture and the irrigated water. So we're just watering enough. We're using a rain pipe to just make sure we've got enough moisture in the lens before we do anything else. That is a critical stage because it determines whether or not your crop is going to establish well. Number one, in the event of a breakdown, for example, maybe you have pumping challenges for some reason, that amount of moisture will sustain your crop until you find a solution to your watering problem. So it's very important to make sure you have enough moisture. The seedlings take off very quickly if they've got enough moisture in on the farm. That is very important. We also did a video before on how not to make money with cabbages. The things that that threaten your bottom line or that threaten your revenue streams when you're doing cabbages, and not watering enough pekutanga is one thing that you also need to look at. The second thing after that is to determine your spacing. I was having a conversation during this past weekend with a friend of ours pertaining to spacing. What we have as spacing is 50 centimeters between rows and about 40 to 45 centimeters within the row. That is our cabbage spacing of choice. But on after every 10 lines, we leave a pathway, which is a pathway of, you just don't plant one line and then it creates a slightly wider pathway, which is about a meter in width. That helps our spraying, that helps our movement in the field, it helps our scouting. The reason why that is important is at some point the cabbages are going to grow big and cover up, and if there is no provision for scouting, there is no provision for spraying, the farmer then gets in trouble. It also works well with our irrigation system, that determination. So I think it's up to you, the farmer, to just make sure you define how you want your spacing to go with ease of operations in mind. So that is the spacing that we're using. One other thing that spacing does is it also influences your head size. If you want a larger head, you create a larger spacing. If you want bigger heads, you go maybe 60 centimeters in width. It also affects head shape to some extent. If you want your head to be slightly wider, you just create a bit more space, maybe 60 by 50 if that works for you. Maybe you go 60 by 45, whatever works for you. You have to determine what sort of head size you want, and it is determined by spacing is one of the first factors that determine, before you even talk about nutrition, before you talk about anything else, your spacing alone has the capacity to determine the head size and head shape that you get, other than the characteristic head shape of the variety that you're growing, obviously. So you'll have to watch your spacing and decide what spacing works for you. Spacing, our spacing is 40 centimeters to 45 within the row and about 50, because primarily our market is not a very large cabbage head market. Our market is happy with the size of cabbage that you'd normally get from Syngenta's Fabiola, which is about a 5 kg head. It's not too big. The housewife has to maybe go through it maybe twice, and then you're done with the cabbage. You don't want it to stay for too long. It gets it loses its freshness. So you want a cabbage that you can quickly eat up and consume. Imagine a family of 4 people having to go through an 8 kg cabbage. inoita musara pakana unongosiyirwa unzi hasotanai morwisana naro cabbage rere until weeks on end uchitadza kupedza cabbage rere uchiziva kuti vana vangu kwandakavasiya kumusha cabbage ravanaro vachine muriwo havana dambudziko. And we don't want that. We don't want that anymore. What we would want is to enjoy our veggies in the freshest state possible. So right now we're pre-watering for the cabbages that we're planting. That is the stage that we're at. We've shown the primary sort of land prep that we do. We just do a bit of cleaning up. The field had sweet potatoes before, so we try to clean up as much as we can. We pick up my vines angarimo and and we just try to make it a bit even, so that when it comes to time of planting and time of watering, that evenness also gravitates to the evenness of the crop. We want a uniform crop. That is also a very key factor for us. So the next stage in our cabbage production, is marking out. We then mark out according to the spacing that we've determined. We mark out nebaza using a hoe. Mark out. We usually use a string. Then we mark out the plant stations that we want to plant. That is what we're going to do next. So chesa tambo to mark a name mapaza using we do it manually. We can do it mechanically, yes, but this is a small crop, so we prefer to just do it manually. It's more precise. Well, we've got labor available, so it's not necessarily precise. I don't think it's more precise, but it is an operation that we think we would rather do manually. It's cost effective for us for this for the size of this crop, for this size of veggies. It makes us a bit more intimate with our crop when we just put our hands to it, for lack of a better way to put it across. But yeah, so we are marking out for our cabbages. So the first thing is to make sure the hole size is big enough to accommodate the amount of manure that we're putting in. We're putting in about 300 grams of manure per planting station. We've devised this small little container. Well, we've picked up a container and measured it and it's giving us what we want. So per station, we're going to put in 300 kgs, 300 grams of well decomposed cattle manure. That's what we're going to be putting in. You can then calculate and see what sort of quantity of manure we're putting in on the hectare in terms of cattle manure, if you just want to spread that out in an instant. But it's 300 grams per station times 10,000 cabbages. That translates to, how many zeros have we got? 300 grams times 10,000. That's 3 million grams. So it's about 3 tons for 10,000. And then if a hectare consumes about 5 times that much, if your hectare goes up to about 50,000, it means you're putting in about 15 tons of cattle manure per hectare. That is the rate or ratio at which we are applying manure. Hey, God bless our maths teachers. Maths is always a difficult subject, but may God bless them. We realized that we needed them more than we thought. But anyway, so we're putting in 15 tons, a rate of 15 tons of cattle manure on the hectare. Our soils are a bit sandy, so that rate should work for us. The reason why we're putting in cattle manure, again, I need to continue saying this, is to save on fertilizer. Try and get a bigger head without necessarily increasing the direct cost of fertilizer, number one. Number two, moisture retention. Manure actually helps moisture retention and soil improvement as well. And number three, you obviously don't use up all the manure that you put in onto the field. It also then helps improve the soil for the next crop that you then plant in. Our rotation system is cabbages, then green millies, then sweet potatoes. That is our nominal rotation system. We then add tomatoes, open field, if the season is right and if the market potential is okay. So that is one other reason why we are adding cattle manure in the cabbage field, to improve our soil for the next crop. The other reason why, because it's winter and cattle manure comes with a bit of heat that it adds, so it also just slightly improves our heat units on the lands as well. It gives our crop a bit more aggression and a better balance of nutrition when it comes to trace elements, your micros and your macros. It's got a balance of everything, so that's why we're using cattle manure. So after marking out, the next stage is we're going to then add cattle manure. We're going to dig holes that are big enough. We are digging holes that are big enough to accommodate both the seedling and the manure. You don't want the seedling to be in direct contact with the manure. So we're going to hole out, add manure, cover with a bit of soil, and then plant the seedlings on soil, not in the manure, not directly in the manure. I feel the need to just stress that. That is what we're then going to be doing, and then that is our planting phase. But the next stage after planting is fertilizer application, and this is the fertilizer regime that we used on the cabbage lot that is the greenhouse. I don't know if it's visible, but behind the greenhouse on that cabbage lot, and we are happy with that cabbage. So with that fertilizer regime, it was given to us by Mrs. Zanele Sibanda, one of our clients. It's the same person who told us not to do less than 10,000 cabbages. So she's been very good to us in terms of sharing knowledge, sharing information, and we feel the need to just also share what she's shared with us and put it into practice. So we put that there in that cabbage crop without manure, and the crop is doing very well. It's almost it's just gone past the halfway mark, and we're happy with it. But that being said, our fertilizer regime for the first week of planting, we're talking about from day 1 to about day 7 of planting my cabbages in, and this is our fertilizer regime. The first thing that we do is to add compound. This is after adding manure. We then add compound. We're going to put 16 grams of compound C, preferably compound C 51512, or even a high C, which is like 921, 20, something like that. You can add 16 grams of that to your cabbage crop just after planting. Remember, your fertilizer must be stationed at or below the root crown of your seedlings. At or below the root crown of your seedlings. Just check where your rooting starts, the seedling pako, and check its position in the soil. We'll try to maybe dollop or use a spade. We use a spade. You can dollop, you can use a spade. Whatever method is practical for you, whatever method works for you. But basal fertilizer should not be thrown onto the surface of the soil like a top dressing. That delays its use and probably reduces its effectiveness as well. So we place our fertilizer at or below, at the level or below the root crown. That is where you place your fertilizer. So we're going to be putting on day 1 16 grams of compound, whatever compound you decide to use, whether it's C or high C, compound D. When you then don't have any other fertilizer, would make a good start. But our best recommendation is compound C or compound, or maybe a cereal blend, maybe for cabbages. That is, it might actually help if you went that route. So that is the second, that is the first application. On day 7, you then reapply the same amount of compound to your crop. So that takes you up to about 30 grams of compound. The reason why we're doing that, the reason why it's a split application is there's a lot of watering settling in that happens midway within the first few weeks, and you want your crop to establish without too much water. But because there isn't too much water for establishment, dumping off and all those other things, you would rather place not too much of your compound peptanga, lest it stresses the crop. It's still coming up. And also the continuous feeding. You want to feed them slowly and get into it. But if operations are too difficult to conduct in that manner, you can add all your compound at planting. I don't see anything too wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with adding your compound at planting. Most people do that and it still works for them. So you can add all your compound at planting if you want. You just put in your 30 grams of compound and you're done. If you want to split it, you can split. The idea is, for us, we want to put in 30, a minimum of 30 grams of compound. So you can put a cup size 22, which will give you about 22 grams of compound, depending on the compound. Place that, and then maybe day 10, maybe day 12, day 14, it depends on what works for you. You can then add another application of maybe 8 grams or 12 grams, a cup size 8 or cup size 12, depending on what that means for you in terms of work and the people that you've got on the farm. If you can also add AN, your first nitrogen application, on day 7 as well. So if you've added all your compound, like if you've added all your compound right at the beginning, say on day 1 or day 2, just after planting you've added your compound on day 2, you can then do your first application of nitrogen on day 7, just after its establishment. We can assure you the takeoff after that is done will be amazing. The best takeoff is determined by having enough fertilizer and a, but after fertilizer, we also would like to just maybe point out what we do pertaining to insect pest management, because after putting in fertilizer and after planting, the next challenge that you'd find are cutworms and white grubs and other insects that just bite and chew off and suck off and just mess up the plant, the crop as you've just planted. And the best, not the best, but our system involves adding lambda as a pyrethroid that deals with your cutworms and any other soil-borne pests, especially of the Lepidoptera kind and small little worms that grow and thrive below the ground. So we add that, but we've also added to that drenching mix. We've also added imidacloprid, and what imidacloprid does is it deals with aphids from the very first few weeks. Aphids are a nuisance. They at their worst, they will prevent head formation for your cabbages. So aphids are a nuisance, and you just want to make sure from day 1 you've dealt with them. So we add to the drenching mix, in lambda, we also add imidacloprid or confido, and that helps deal with aphids for the first 4 to 5 weeks. It is said 6 weeks, but we prefer to maybe stretch that a bit to about 3 weeks. We don't worry about aphids for the first 3 weeks. Your major pests when it comes to cabbages are that cutworm setup. You've got jassids and grasshoppers that hop about and bite off, and then you've got a worm problem that usually comes from the larva of diamond black moth, and then you've also got aphids as your major pests. Diseases not so much. If you just get your seedlings from a disease-free nursery and you do your crop rotation, you hardly have problems with diseases. But in the event that you find dumping off and other leaf spots like your alternaria and the likes happening onto your cabbage, it's usually a very simple case to deal with, unless if you find yellows. Yellows are a bit difficult, but usually just a routine spray of good curative fungicides once every 2 weeks usually helps prevent fungal diseases in your cabbages. We usually just from day 1 after planting, we also drench in not in the same tank mix, but we also drench in mancozeb or a mancozeb based fungicide like Chemalaxil, some call it ridomil, some call it metalaxil. That's a good drench. It deals with your dumping off and all those other funny diseases that want to just attack your cabbages when they're still tender. And it also just kills off some of the spores of some existing spores of some disease left over. But if you do your crop rotation properly, you won't have those problems. Our crop rotation system is cabbages, then sweet potatoes. No, it's actually green mealies, cabbages, then sweet potatoes in that rotation. So Papa, we plant sweet potatoes first, and then from the sweet potatoes you go on to cabbages, and then from the cabbages you get on to green mealies, and then from green mealies you plant sweet potatoes. But within that rotation setup, we also do tomatoes. It will be interesting and fun to add tomatoes. It's usually interesting and fun to add tomatoes when the market season is good. I'm usually preaching consistency, but when it comes to tomatoes, my preaching is if you plant your tomatoes on 1 November, you usually get onto the market when the market is good. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But now this year we're also doing a July planting to see how that goes, and then to just get us into rhythm and get us into being consistent when it comes to tomato production, because the gospel is consistency when it comes to farming and marketing. It's always about consistency, consistent. You have to be doing the same things, the same crops over and over again until you can call yourself an expert in running those crops. I think that at that point, that is when real growth and real success comes with farming. So not too many crops, but just consistent and doing them over and over until everyone on your team, be it the lowest grader to the manager, can claim to be experts of that particular crop. When you get to that stage, I think that is where real success will start coming. And I think that is where good leadership results can be seen, when you have got experts all around you doing very well. So we've always said the life. I always quote this meme, or this saying that came on the internet a few years back. The lifestyle that we imagine after we've planted 5,000 cabbages. Well, we've planted the first 10,000. We're going to plant the next 10,000. You can imagine the sort of lifestyle that I'm imagining right now. But all that will not come to fruition if I don't get the first week right. If we don't get the first week right, if we don't set our foundations, if we don't build firm foundations on our crops, it will be hard to achieve the lifestyle that we want to imagine after planting 5,000 cabbages. Thank you.